Yonda had never wanted to smack someone as hard as she did right now. She had to use all her restraint as she sat on the bed, petting Esper for comfort, with Sheena on her knees in front of her. So let me get this straight. They asked you for help to make music for their game because apparently, you can sing, and despite not having musical talent other than singing, you agreed, and now you're asking me, the deaf girl, for help in learning how to make music. Well, when she says it like that she makes me sound like an idiot. Sheena thought. You are an idiot. Yonda shouted at her, causing her to jump back a bit and fall on her butt. And Sheena could have sworn Esper was giving an amused look. Well, I just thought, if I did good tea then maybe I could be friends with everyone. Sheena admitted tearfully. You know what? You're right. Yonda said, her tone suddenly turning strangely sweet. I'm sure that if you actually managed to pull this off, then everyone would be much nicer to you. Really? Sheena asked hopefully. Really? Yonda affirmed with a smile. Just one problem. What? Sheena asked. Oh, it's just the small fact that you are the most incapable person I've ever met. Yonda screamed, her tone returning back to genuine fury, once again causing Sheena to fall back, this time onto her back. Ow. Sheena groaned, and she could have sworn she heard the cat snicker. Yonda took a deep breath and rubbed her temples. No, that's not true. You won't be the most incapable person I've ever met. So long as you do one thing. And, what is that? Sheena asked timidly, hoping not to get yelled at again. Just, do something about it. Yonda answered simply. If you just try to do something about your problems instead of just complaining about them, then you will be far more capable than many people I've met. Okay, so what do I do? Sheena asked desperately. Well, I can't help much because A, I'm grounded, and B, I'm deaf. Yonda sighed. And unfortunately, no one here is any good with music. So you're pretty much on your own. The only advice I can give you is to ask Father for some stuff to help you learn, and read as many books on the subject as you can. That's all you can do? Sheena gulped fearfully, which only got worse when Yonda glared at her. Oh, I'm sorry, was I the one who made a promise I couldn't keep? Yonda asked sarcastically. No. Was I the one who went to a grounded deaf girl for music lessons? Also no. You're lucky I'm helping this much despite how much you've annoyed me. Now get out of my room and start learning, before I let Esper use your face as a scratching post. EAP. Sheena jumped to her feet and immediately ran away. Oh, and Sheena, one more thing. Yonda told her, stopping the girl as she was about to leave the room. Like you said, if you succeed it will boost your reputation. With that said, even someone as stupid as you should understand what will happen if you fail. Sheena gulped once again, and now she could physically feel the pressure weighing on top of her. That's all now. But bye. Yonda said as she waved Sheena off, cueing her to leave. Sheena quickly did so, leaving the room and closing the door behind her. She had work to do. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX course books. It had been a whole day since she accepted that request, and things were not going well. Thanks to Azuka, she was able to quickly get her hands on some digital music making equipment. However, she had very little success in actually using it, and so she spent the entire day up until this point, trying to figure out how to actually make music. But it was all so complicated and hard to understand. It took her far too long to actually figure anything out, and there was so much more to learn. The game has to be out in just a couple of months. There's no way I can learn all this and make enough music in that short amount of time. Not to mention I still have to learn how to play actual instruments. Sheena cried as she once again slammed her head against the desk. There's no way I can do this. I'm gonna fail. Everyone's gonna be angry at me, and Yonda's gonna call me an idiot again. Sheena groaned as she looked down at her arm. Of course, she could fix this whole issue if she just used her quirk. But she really didn't want to. If she just used her quirk to give herself the talent, then she wouldn't be helping them out, it would just be her quirk. Was that all she was? Was her quirk the only good thing about her? Was that why she was so bad at everything else? Sheena wanted so badly to develop some talents and get this done with her own merit. But at the same time, she couldn't afford to fail and make her reputation even worse than it already was. Not to mention, if she failed, she'd be affecting others, not just herself. If she had a way to succeed and didn't use it, that would just be being selfish at this point. Sheena raised her head and both her arms before turning her right arm into a scythe. It couldn't be helped, she could only do so much with so little time. And that's when the metaphorical light bulb lit up over her head. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX saw dozens of Sheenas looking at various books. The library was absolutely crawling with Sheenas, they were at every table, and some were even sitting on the floor. All of them going through books at the same time, as quickly and thoroughly as possible. And little did Nara know, but there were even more Sheenas running around the house, practicing instruments and musical software, figuring out things by trial and error. Meanwhile, other Sheenas were pulling up as many online tutorials and video guides as they could. Sheena? Nara asked the room of Sheenas, causing them all to look at her at once. Oh hi Nara, did you need to use the library? The Sheena closest to her asked as the other ones went back to their research. I was gonna go get a book but, what's going on here? Nara asked. Oh, well I needed to learn something fast, so I killed my Unity, and cloned myself a bunch of times. Sheena explained. I see, Nara said with a mix of befuddlement and curiosity. Why didn't you do this during any of your fights? Well, if anything happens to my clones, then it also happens to the main me once the 9 minutes are up. So if any of them get injured or die, then the real me will get injured or die. Sheena explained. And all the injuries add up too, so using this in a fight could put me in a lot of danger. And also dash. Poof. Suddenly, all the Sheenas except the one talking to Nara, which happened to be the real one. Sheena crumpled to the ground, her pupils dilated, as she just twitched on the ground while gasping for air. Sheena! Nara shouted out in a panic, kneeling down to try and see what was wrong with the girl. SSSSSSI side AFF effect. Sheena choked out through the intense pain she was in. Much like all the physical attributes of what happened to her clones would compile onto her when the 9 minutes were up, it was the same for the mental attributes. All the memories and information that her clones gathered in that time would be bundled up into her all at once. As you can imagine, that caused a bit of pain, in the form of a headache that could be compared to having your head slowly yet quickly crushed. In other words, an indescribable pain that incapacitated Sheena immediately. For the next few minutes, Sheena breathed in and out, while trying her best to deal with the pain, until eventually, it began to subside. Thank you, Sheena said as she clutched her head, and Nara helped her to her feet. Are you gonna be okay? Nara asked. Do you need to go to Vera? Why would you do that to yourself? I need to learn something, very quickly, Sheena said. I'll be fine. It's just pain. Yeah, but that looked like a lot of pain. Nara pointed out, concerned for the younger girl. It's okay. Sheena groaned. I just need a minute, and then I can do it again. You're gonna do that again? Nara asked in shock. Are you crazy? Sheena shook her head. I have to work hard. I'm not very good at, well, everything. So if I don't do stuff like this, I won't be able to be useful, or make anyone like me. Nara gave her a pitiful look. Now she understood. She knew how much loneliness hurt, and she knew the lengths one would go to rid themselves of it. Still that's. I have to do it, Sheena said, giving Nara a determined look. Nara bit her lip as she looked down at the bony girl in front of her. She knew that look, and she knew that there was little she could do to deter her. Okay. Just, don't overdo it. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX room, with a spur on her shoulder. It had been 2 weeks since Sheena had come to her for help, and now she can finally check up on her. Yonda walked all the way to the library, and what she saw was pretty much what she expected. The library was a mess, books were strewn all over the floor, and chairs were knocked over. Sheena herself was face down, presumably unconscious, on one of the tables. Well, it looks like all's going as planned. Yonda thought to herself, as she walked into the library, and casually approached Sheena. Yonda then flicked Sheena's head and got no response. And so she shook Sheena, also no response. She then lifted Sheena's head and took a look at her sleeping face. There were huge bags under her eyes, from many sleepless nights spent studying and learning everything related to music. Sheena had no doubt spent countless hours, pouring all her effort into trying to do an impossible task. Of course, Yonda knew this would happen. It took years for people to get proficient with instruments and music, enough to actually make something good. Even if Sheena used her quirk to increase the rate at which she could learn, it would still take quite some time for her to actually gain these skills. Especially because she pressured her to fear failure. But Yonda didn't need her to succeed, she only needed her to try. Oh no, Sheena. What happened? Yonda shouted with fake shock. Someone, please, come help. Almost immediately, Kiba ran and saw Sheena unconscious on the table. What happened? Sheena. Sheena. Kiba was so focused on Sheena that she didn't notice Yonda smirking off to the side. Just as planned. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX Wadash. She opened her eyes, and found herself in the med wing, laying down in one of the beds, with Izuku, Fu, Nara, Yonda, Ken, Shiroku, Yami Vera, and Kiba standing over her. She's awake. Thank goodness. Kiba breathed a sigh of relief. I told you. She is simply exhausted. She only needs bed and rest. Vera explained. What happened? Sheena groaned. Her body felt weak, and her head was pounding. Just trying to move at this point would be painful for her. You overworked yourself. Izuku sighed. I swear overwork is the curse of the Midoriya family. I told you not to overdo it. Nara scolded her. I am sorry. Sheena apologized, as she started to cry. It's just, You wanted to learn how to make music, because you didn't actually know how to do it when you agreed to help us. Fu surmised. Sheena's face went white. Yonda told us, Fu explained. I'm sorry. Sheena apologized again, as more tears poured from her eyes, and she readied herself to get yelled at for her lies and failure. I shouldn't have said I could do it. I just dash. We get it. Ken interrupted her. Huh? Sheena's expression went blank after hearing that. Safe to say that wasn't the response she expected. Okay, at first I was pretty upset, but then I thought about it, and honestly, I get it, Ken admitted. Yeah, Ken definitely would do something that stupid to get friends, Nara added, much to her brother's chagrin. We were treating you rather coldly, Shiroku admitted with a frown. But still to go this far, Nara told us about that duplication thing, and how painful it was. How many times did you do that? I didn't really count. Sheena admitted as she sniffled and wiped away her tears. Sorry. You don't need to apologize, if anything I should be apologizing for not noticing this and putting a stop to it, Izuku said. I really need to hire more employees. As caretaker said, you need to apologize, you just need to promise never to do that again, Kiba said firmly, glaring at the girl for extra effect. Sheena gulped. I promise. I won't do that ever again. Good. Kiba smiled. That being said, I'm very touched that you went through all that effort just for us. Your determination is praiseworthy indeed. Does that mean you don't hate me anymore? Sheena asked hopefully. We didn't really hate you, just kinda mistrusted you, but I'd say you'd worked hard enough for our trust, Shiroku said with a gentle smile. Yeah, we're cool. Just don't do anything suspicious. Got it? Ken asked. Yes, got it. Thank you, Sheena said enthusiastically, her tears flowing freely, now tears of joy instead of fear or sadness. Yonda smirked in the background. She had done her job well.